Hey Blazers, this episode is brought to you by Audible.com, an Amazon company. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/Blaze Entertainment.
Or visit the sponsor and supporters links on our website at entertheblaze.com. With over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Now let's start the show.
4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Let's start the party. You're locked in to the hottest station on the planet.
What's going on, Blazers? We are back with another episode of Blaze Entertainment. I'm your host, Kwame, joined by the beautiful, the melanin proficient, the queen of Blaze, Miss Free. What's up, boo?
I'm good. Yeah. Thinking about Wakanda.
Yes, Wakanda forever, all day.
Thinking about maybe going on vacation there.
You know, I think that's possible.
Yes.
You know, why not?
Mm-hmm.
I think that M'Baku should be my date. Because he seems really rough.
You was just all about T'Challa 2 seconds ago.
First of all, T'Challa.
You can't even.
See, he gets me all hot and bothered. I can't even talk.
See, right. So
he's my husband. Okay. Right? So that's first and foremost.
Okay.
But we're not going to go there.
All right.
It's not about us. Today, it is about the handsome, the incomparable, the amazing Craig, the writer Stewart. What's going on, Craig?
Hey. Good day, thinkers, thought leaders, progressives, and dreamers. How are you?
Yes, come on. What's your taglines? I love it. How art thou?
Y'all crazy.
Oh, you have no idea. So what brings you into these parts of town, sir? What's going on with you? How are things?
Things are amazing. I'm in LA because I had a signing. I just launched my third book. I just released my third book. It's called So Much to Say, a book of quotes. But my first two books, it's a 2-part memoir series. The first is Words Never Spoken, a memoir. The second book is One Thing for Certain, Two Things for Sure.
Awesome. Look at you. You just doing things out here in these streets.
Gotta make moves, right? Gotta make moves.
Right. Gotta make this point. So
and change lives.
Yeah, that's true. Amen. And for those who, for our Blazers, our audience, and for those who don't know who you are, tell us who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
I'm a writer, and I don't identify just as an author because when I began my career as a writer, I started off writing music. I thought that was all that I could do, and I thought that was all I wanted to do was write music. And so when I started in this thing, I was writing with and for producers that you all would know, producers that have had songs on radio, producers that have placed songs on artists' albums. And so I did that for a while, but because my personal life kind of intercepted my professional life, I started writing a stage play called A Day in the Life. And that play was born out of a relationship that I had. The very first man that I fell in love with was HIV positive. And it was pretty much a nightmare for me at that time. Because it was all, I think we have this idea, I identify as a black gay man, but I think we all have an idea of what gay means and what gay looks like when we come into this community. And I don't use the word lifestyle, so I intentionally use the word community because lifestyle kind of denotes it's a choice, it's a decision. And I just believe that gay is a part of who you are, it's a part of how you're wired. So when I came in this community, I had a very set idea of what it looked like and what it meant, like what it meant to be gay. And so HIV was weaved into the fabric of my imagination, if you will. And so I kind of thought that, well, that's kind of part and parcel of being gay. And so it was really a fear of mine to interact with someone that was HIV positive, become HIV positive. So like those were all fears of mine. And so I ended up, because of that relationship, I ended up writing and producing a stage play called A Day in the Life. That show sold out. It flopped 2 times after that, but then it sold out again. But during the times that it flopped, I experienced a depression. And that depression, one of the side effects of my depression was meeting and having sex with people that I did not know. I was having casual sex. It was internet, cyberspace hookups, if you will. It was anonymous sex. And I understand that depression affects people differently. Some people, they overeat. Some people become alcoholics. Some people use drugs, whatever it is. Some people go on shopping binges. So I understand now how my depression played out. But I write about all of those things in my first two books. And then even how I came out of that depression. But again, the original point is I identify as a writer because I started off writing music. It became a stage play. And then I founded a greeting card company. And now I'm writing and promoting books, which
Amen.
I never imagined happened.
Amen. I resonated with you when you were talking about how, during your relationship and you having those issues and going through that kind of dark time that you manifested artwork, and you manifested, greatness actually from it. And I resonated with that because, I'm a dancer. And so a lot of my best choreography came from painful times in my life. And so kudos to you for that.
Thank you.
For sure.
So yes, I just try to use my gifts to reach, teach, and heal myself, but then also other people.
Amen. And so my next question to you was going to be, how now you have a podcast as well, right? Like you're not just like new to the game. Like
I do host a podcast. My podcast is called So Much to Say. It's of course in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Google Play. But So Much to Say, the germ of the idea came from my desire to be able to reach and connect with people on a consistent basis. You know what I'm saying? Because my first book, Words Never Spoken, came out in 2012. The second book was 3 years after that. And then the third book just came out this past December 2017. And so between those times that I released these books, I had a lot of people saying to me, well, what's next? What are you doing next? And I realized that people get excited and they want to hear more from you. So I decided that I would create and start a podcast because it would be a way for me to connect with people on a weekly basis. So every Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, I drop a new podcast. And again, it's called So Much to Say. We talk about black shit, white shit, gay shit, and everything in between. You know what I mean? So we talk about everything from gentrification all the way down to the double standard of bisexuality and bipolar disorder. We talk about everything. And it's free. The podcast is free.
Right on.
Yeah.
And what led you to podcasting? Like in terms of because I know that some people just like to be guests on podcasts. Some people because you produce your podcast as well, correct?
Yeah, I do. I produce my podcast, I host it, and I edit. I do the editing as well.
Oh, you do all of it.
Yeah, listen, we're building a brand over here.
I know that's right.
But no, I believe that there are markers in life. And I speak often about this book called The Alchemist. You may have heard it. You may have read it. And in that book, it's not one of those books where you have to be ready to receive it. You have to be ready to receive the messages in this book, The Alchemist, because it's about a shepherd. And he's on this journey. And along this journey, he's on a journey. And the journey, of course, has a final destination. But along the journey, there are so many detours. And there's which most people could interpret as setbacks, where he fell off course. And life is that same way for each of us. We all are on this journey. And sometimes I know in points in my life, I felt like I was off course. I had to take a job that I really didn't want. And it didn't really feel like it was tied into my ultimate goals. But every single thing has purpose. Even when you don't understand it, every single thing has purpose. And so there were people in my life who kept saying to me, you should do a talk show. Oh my God, you're hilarious. Or, oh my God, your personality. I believe that God was sending, or the universe was sending these people my way. And God speaks to us through people.
Mm-hmm.
He speaks to us through people and through things. And he's always speaking, but we're not always listening. And so for a long time, like my mom was probably the first person. She said, you should do a talk show. But when she said talk show, I was thinking like Oprah Winfrey, Montel Williams. I'm like, no. I'm like, you can't just go and do a talk show. What do you mean, just go and do a talk show? Mm. And so then, like later, like other people said, oh my God, you just need to be in front of the camera. Because again, I've always been a behind the scenes kind of person. I've always been a writer, a producer, that type of thing. And so several people who did not know each other. And I believe there's something really powerful about when two or more people say the same thing to you, and those people don't know each other, there has to be some truth to it. Mm. There has to be some truth to it. And so one of my friends said to me, she said, oh my God, when I was about to release my third book, which is a book of quotes, she said, I was reading some of the quotes to her, and she said, oh my God, like, Craig, like you need to host a podcast. And of course, at this point, podcasts are becoming brand new. And I'm like, I don't want to do no podcast. Like, that's not what I'm really interested in. That's not my lane. But because several people had said it to me back to back to back, I started to explore it. I'm like, okay, well, God, maybe you're trying to tell me something. Maybe you're trying to direct me. And so I started doing this podcast. In addition to doing the podcast, I started going on my Facebook Live Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I just talk about whatever's going on in my life. I talk about my work. I talk about whatever. And when I tell you thousands upon thousands of people watch this video by the time I come off of Facebook Live. And so I just believe that it's God's way of trying to expand my territory or enlarge my territory to bring attention to the work that I do through my personality. So yeah, people are interested in buying the books, but people will buy your books because they believe in who you are. Right. They support you. They have to like you. Right. Then they'll support your art. If they can like you, they'll support your art. And so I started making myself available in front of the camera. And then as a result of that, it's like, oh, people are like, oh, well, what else do? You have books? What are your books about? You know?
Interesting. Now, you said you produce as well, and I heard through the grapevine that you produce a particular person's show as well.
Yes, I worked with Brandy. I worked with Tweed. Yes, and you also produce a very awesome person that I particularly love. T.S. Madison's podcast as well. So yeah, I'm going there. Somebody's been doing their homework.
Yes, I do a little song.
So wait, how did you know that? Because I really feel like I'm so behind the scenes on that. Like, it shocks me that people stop me now and it's like, oh my, they'll say, "Is you live, whore?" Like, people will say that. And I'm just like, How do you know about that? Because I mean, I've only been in front of the camera at the Queen's Court a handful of times, if that.
So I can't reveal my sources.
Okay. But yes, I co-produce the Queen's Court podcast with T.S. Madison. So they have the Queen's Court live show, which is on Facebook. But then she was a guest on my podcast, so much to say. And so we just developed this friendship, but it was very organic because we didn't talk a lot initially. But then one day she reached out and said, "Hey, listen, I think I want to start a podcast. Would you help me do it?" And she asked me, "How much will you charge me to do it?" And I just personally believe that we have to start lending our services sometimes to people. And I said, "Well, listen, I'm not going to charge you to tell you how to set it up for you." But then what happened was, once I set it up, she said, "Okay, well, I'm gonna need it edited, right? You do your own, right? Can you?" So then we started talking about, okay, well, you'll work with us, and I'll pay you this to edit our podcast. But now it's become, I work with them behind the scenes for the live show as well too. So we're just growing in the way that we work. Like, we work really well together, Madison and I. We bounce ideas off of each other, and we have a very similar vision for ourselves and the work that we want to put out, the work that we want to produce for the people.
Yeah.
Like we really want to affect change, and we want to challenge the way people think. We want to challenge people's belief systems, because oftentimes you have this idea of what you think you know about life and the world and people, but when art hits you in the right kind of way, it really can challenge you to second guess what you think you believe.
Right. And
so we have a beautiful relationship now.
I'm not even surprised to hear that, because I've heard great things about T.S. Madison, and I'm a avid fan of the Queen's Court, specifically T.S. Madison. So shout out to her, because I know one of our co-hosts on the After the Blaze podcast, which is our recap show, Hope Giselle is really good friends with her, and so and she speaks highly of T.S. Madison. So when I told her that I was like, one of her show's producers is going to be on that show. She's like, oh, can I be on the show? And I was like, no, girl, you have your own. but no, she's good people. But anyway, but yes, I wanted to ask you about that, because I know Miss Free and I, we talk heavily about the growth of the show, and how Miss Free does a lot of awesome behind the scenes stuff. She's the reason why the show is what it is today.
Thanks.
so I resonated with that, and I wanted to know, how is it, producing so much content and so much quality content, and like I know just the editing process in and of itself is a full-time job, so to be able to,
it is. It really is.
And to be able to do that plus your show, and plus to continue to build your brand, how do you balance that?
Well, the thing that's so interesting is when Madison and I got together, she does the live show, the Queen's Supreme Court. It's actually going to be rebranded starting the 19th of this month. So it's going to be called the Queen's Supreme Court. So they
exclusive.
I know, right? I was like, oh, I did not even know that little piece, that little gem.
So starting on the 19th, it's going to be Queen's Supreme Court. But that show is on Mondays. My podcast, that's Monday night. My podcast drops Monday morning at 10. So they're 12 hours apart. And then the Queen's Supreme Court podcast drops on Friday mornings at 6 a.m. So it gives me enough time to be able to edit my podcast, edit the Queen's Supreme Court podcast, and still be over at the Queen's Court operating cameras and, whatever it is that I do over there. But in terms of me managing my book tour, because I just started a book tour for my third book, but of course, I always have copies of the first and second books as well. People always ask me that. Are you going to have copies of the first two books as well? I don't want just the third book,
right?
But I always have all three books with me. But because I just launched this book tour, I'm able to schedule that and route that around everything else that I have going on.
Awesome.
If that makes sense.
You better hustle. I said you better hustle.
Yeah. So and the thing is, when all of this is tied to my passion, and so when you're really moving within your passion, when you're really moving within your purpose, your life's work, your life purpose, it really doesn't feel overwhelming. And it's an old adage where people say, if you find your passion, then you'll never work a day in your life, and it's really true. Mm-hmm. It really is true. But the reality is, and I was just sharing on my Facebook Live, I can literally reach back 6 months, 6 short months, where I was just hoping to be able to sustain financially off of my work. Mm-hmm. And I'm in that space now. So the days that I was once praying for, I'm living those days now. So I won't complain about that. I won't, you know what I'm saying? Like, I won't complain about it, because all I wanted to be able to do was to wake up and do what I love doing. I didn't want to have to get up and go to a job. And that's one of the things that I try to encourage anybody who follows the work that I do. Everybody is not built to be an entrepreneur. That's not what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. But everybody was put on this earth to follow their passion,
Amen.
to run to their dreams.
Mm-hmm. But
oftentimes we get distracted and we don't run to our dreams because, one, we're conditioned to go to a job. Like my mom, even when I first told my mom that I was a writer and I was moving here right after college, 2 days after college, I was going to be a writer. And she said to me, boy, you better go and get you a job. That's a hobby. You better get you a job with a 401k.
Right.
But guess who's my biggest fan now?
Right.
My biggest fan. And when you're talking about the arts, especially when you're talking about being a writer, people don't really acknowledge it as a legitimate type career until you start making money.
Right.
You know?
So I hear you talk a lot about passion and, you know, finding your passion. So what kind of advice could you give to someone who is struggling to find their passion? You know, you speak about like hearing people say, you know, the word speaking through God speaking through people. So what advice would you give to someone who's struggling to find that passion?
I think that it really is about sitting still long enough and coming to terms with what you enjoy doing. Like, what would you do for free? Mm-hmm. What would you do for free? Like, what is the service that you would provide if you were not getting paid? Like, I'm writing a book now, and in this particular book that I'm writing now, there's a chapter called Passion, Fate, and Destiny. Mm-hmm. And I personally believe, I really do believe that every single person was born on this planet with a purpose, even people with disabilities. Mm-hmm. I think every single person has a responsibility. But what happens is we're intimidated to chase our dream because we're so used to accepting a paycheck every week or every 2 weeks or every month. Some people have to have that check. Not everybody has that je ne sais quoi to follow their dream and not know when that next check is going to come. Mm-hmm. Not everybody has that. But there have been periods and points in my career as a writer where I was working full-time jobs. And I had great jobs. Like when I came out of college, my first job was for Coca-Cola. My job after Coca-Cola was MARTA, which is the transit system in Atlanta. Then I worked for Hewlett-Packard, IBM. Like I've always had great jobs. But I was always secretly plotting and planning what my next move was going to be. I was always trying to figure out how I was going to get to my dream, how I was going to get on course. Because for whatever reason, at 26, 28, 30, I always felt like I was off course whenever I was working a job that had nothing to do with my career. But I know now at 41 years old that every single thing has purpose. And so even when there were periods where writing became difficult or I felt frustrated because I wasn't making money or I was experiencing setbacks, I always found myself going back to it. Even when I said I would quit, I quit, I give up, I'm just going to go and get a job. I always found myself coming back to it. I would always gravitate back to it, even after I promised myself I would give up. For me, writing was like that relationship that you know you need to walk away from, but you don't walk away because it's like it's so comfortable for you. Mm-hmm. That's what writing was for me. So whatever your passion is going to be, that thing.
Very interesting. You better go ahead and drop these gems, Mr. Stewart.
I'm like thinking like, just be still and be quiet.
Right. and I think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You gotta be, yes. And you have to ask for it. You really have to ask for it. I really believe in asking God or the universe, whatever your belief system is. You have to get centered. And because I personally believe that your instincts, that your conscience is your direct roadmap to God or the universe, whatever you call it. Don't get caught up in semantics. Some people may be atheists or agnostic, but the point is you have to get still long enough to listen to your inner spirit. That's your compass. That's your life compass to guide you. That life compass will tell you when it's time to leave a job. It'll tell you when it's time to leave a relationship. It'll tell you when it's time to let go of your children because you're doing too much. It'll let you know when it's time to move from one state to another because there's something else. Like for me, when I moved to California, my first book, I wrote it living in California, but I had lived in Atlanta for 13 years. And for the last 3 years that I lived in Atlanta, my fear was telling me, you don't want to leave Atlanta. This is where you need to be. This is where you sold out your play. This is where you started your greeting card company. You cannot leave here. But my spirit, my instincts, my gut were all telling me, you need to go to LA. You need to be in LA. Now, looking back, I realized that I needed to be in LA because that's where my first book wanted to be born.
Mm-hmm.
That first book would have never been written had I not left Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
But see, Atlanta was so comfortable for me because this is where I came right after college, and I knew most of my friends were here. It was a comfortable place for me to live.
Interesting. Wow. Are you still there, Craig?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. I thought we lost you.
Yeah, I was like,
it sounded weird.
It got quiet for a minute. Too quiet.
So with that being said, with everything that is going on, like you talked about like your spirit and moving according to the pull of your spirit, and I resonate with that tremendously. My question to you is, like, I know that like I said earlier, Blaze would not have been, successful without me meeting, Miss Free and our connection that we personally have with each other. And so I'm very careful about who comes into our business and who works with us and stuff like that. So is that something that, because that's one of the things that I've been telling people who have been asking me, how did you start your podcast? What tips do you have for, me starting a show or whatever? And I tell them if they're going to have a co-host or a team or whatever, that it's not something that they need to have everybody join in on. Like, just because they're your friends doesn't mean that they need to be in it. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
So my question to you would be, how would you discern who needs to be in your life and who doesn't, or not life, or rather your business, and who doesn't?
Oh, wow. What's interesting is because I used to have that trouble in my personal life.
Mm-hmm.
In my personal life, in my dating life, I used to confuse a person's interest in me with a person just gravitating to my light. I used to confuse a person being interested in wanting to be with me with, I'm just gravitating to his words. I'm gravitating to his mind, the way that he thinks, the way that he sees the world. I used to confuse the two. So basically, they didn't necessarily want to be with me or be in relationship with me or even know how to be in relationship with me. They were simply attracted to the glow, if that makes sense. And without sounding cocky or crazy.
No, that's amazing.
You know what I mean? And so it's like, and I just had this conversation with some friends just before this interview. I was saying to them, I've been single now 7 years, and I made peace with my singleness for now. Of course, I crave companionship. I'm not desperate for it. I'm not anxious for it. But I do crave it because I'm a human, and I think it's human nature to want to be with other people, to grow and to be loved and to give love. But I have become so focused on the work that I'm doing that I'm very clear that I'm not interested in another boyfriend. I've had boyfriends. I'm only interested in a partner. A partner has a life of their own. They're passionate about what they're interested in, what their life purpose is, what their life work is. And they're not trying to deter me or pull me from my works. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, right. They can stand alone in the light. And I've literally had people say to me, and I'm only sharing this because I literally just had this conversation before I came on here. I have had people say to me, I could never date you because you're a public person. You're a public figure. But what I hear them saying is, your light is too bright for me.
Right.
I'm too insecure. And what I also hear them saying is, you're going to have to pacify me this entire relationship. Because I'm going to need you to keep reassuring me that you want to be with me, that I'm enough. And so I'm waiting for the partner. I'm waiting for the partner. So the same thing applies to business. Like, I can always feel or tell when people want to attach themselves to the light, if you will. Like I shared with my Facebook Live people, I think last week, we live in a world of social media. So I get people messaging me on my Facebook, Instagram all the time saying, hey, I want to write, I want you to help me write this book. I want us to write a project together. And it's like, well, you've never written a book. So basically you're asking me to do the work.
Right.
Like, you're asking me to do the work. And so, and I'm like, well, no, that's not really where I am. So I have no problem working with anyone, but I want to be able to work with people that have already started to lay the foundation for themselves, whatever that is.
Right.
People invest in you once you've already started investing in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Craig, thank you so much for that, because that was confirmation for me on something that was going on for a while. Because like for we have a very for those who don't know, like I'm also the managing producer of our network, and so we have a process for when podcasts join the network. And so it's not like, it's not just because you have a show or you want us to produce your show. Like, we don't just want your money. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not like, we do understand that, there's compensation that's needed for the work that we do in terms of, especially if we produce it. But at the same time, we can easily just have everybody that wants to have a show and wants to pay for it, but that's not what we do. And so we have this really kind of vigorous process in terms of, like, you go through an interview, you go through this, and you talk, you let us know what what your show is about or what you want your show to be about. There's a vigorous process that goes through it, and sometimes it takes a little bit of time. So I've seen one of the reasons why we did that is because we wanted to make sure that there was not first of all, we wanted to weed out the ones that just wanted us to do all the work for them, and then also because it's not our vision. Your show is your show. Mm-hmm. We're just here to help set a platform for it and set it up, and then also too, it also lets us know if it's going to be a right fit, because you can have great content, you can pull a lot of thousands of people to the network, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we want that to be a part of the network. You know what I'm saying? If just because it's not necessarily that you align with what our goals and aspirations are for the network, and so like you just gave me confirmation that that's okay. That's okay to be that stringent. You know what I mean?
And let me tell you, I'll give you two quick examples. Like, someone reached out to me yesterday. I think she's a publicist, and she reached out to me and said, hey, I have an author. She just wrote a book about depression, and I wanted to see if you're still accepting guests for your podcast. I would love for you to bring her on and interview her, but that's not what I do. Mm-hmm. That's not what So Much to Say is about. Mm-hmm. On So Much to Say, we talk about black shit, white shit, gay shit, and everything in between. So we talk about a variety of subjects, as I said to you before. I'm not on there interviewing you about your book.
Right.
Now you can come on and talk about depression, and we can plug your book. But this is a conversation.
Right.
Like, I'm not here to talk about your writing process and what you do. So you have to know what your lane is. You have to know what your vision is, and you have to know what your parameters are. And the other piece that I was going to say to that was, many years ago, you may have heard this story, many years ago when Oprah Winfrey was doing her talk show, The Oprah Winfrey Show, she got a lot of flack. When her show really started to take off and become a household name, she got a lot of flack from black folks, because black folks felt like her show catered to white people. Mm-hmm. Now, what I'll say to you is, her show didn't cater to white people. Her show catered to a class of people. Now, her majority audience may have been stay-at-home white moms, but the show itself was for a class of people. And so what happened was, she got all of this criticism from black viewers, and they would say, well, your show is so white. Why is it white? And da-da-da. And so I remember seeing an interview with her, and she said she had a conversation with Sidney Poitier and the one that was just out here talking about Marlon Brando and Richard Pryor sleeping together, and Marvin Gaye. Quincy Jones.
Quincy Jones, yeah.
Right. So they were at Quincy Jones's house, and she was crying. She was upset because she was getting all of this negative criticism from the black community about the show being too white. And she was crying, and Sidney Poitier said to her, and this is what I take for myself, I carry this with me. He said to her, whenever you're carrying the dreams of people, they expect for you to take the dream in the direction that they want it to go, because they're living vicariously through you. But you are the master of your dream. This is your dream. So you get to decide where it goes. People don't get to tell you where it goes. Like, I've had people tell me, oh, well, with your stage play, why didn't you have this character do this? First of all, this was my vision. This is what I sat down to create. If you want your characters to do that, then you write that show and let the characters.
Right.
Then you do it.
If you want a talk show to cater to black people only, then you do that talk show. But you don't get to tell me what to do with my show.
I know that's right.
I've had people tell me how to promote my books. And I've said this openly before. My first book, I promoted primarily on Jack'd, which is a gay social media app or gay hookup site, however you want to call it. But I have sold more books on Jack'd than I did on Amazon. And when I tell you there were guys that would message me on there, the majority of them got it. And they would say they understood the strategy. And they were like, oh my God, this was genius.
Mm-hmm.
It had this promotion on here. Because I had a YouTube link on my Jack page that took you to my YouTube channel. And where I'm reading a section from the book where I talk about the depression and where I was meeting guys that I didn't know and having sex. So they connected with that. But then there was a small crop of guys who would say, what you doing on here selling your books on Jack? This ain't Barnes & Noble. I came on here for sex. I didn't come here to buy no book. Or then you had the ones that said, this is a poor idea. You ain't going to make no money on here. Ain't nobody on here buying no books. And I said, well, I'm glad you are the marketing aficionado because actually, I have sold more books on here than I have on Amazon. And I said, I have the invoices to prove it. I said, but when you write your book, you get to decide where you promote your book. But this is mine. But thank you for your unsolicited advice. You got to get the children together from time to time.
Right. Yeah, let these little children know.
Yeah. But you have to stay focused on your vision.
Yes.
Blaze Entertainment has a vision.
Yes.
And so you can't allow people to distract you and pull you in other directions because then that's no longer your vision. That's theirs.
Yeah.
And even as a writer, I get people saying to me all the time, well, when are you going to write a book about this? Girl, that's not what I'm writing. You don't get to curate what I write.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't get to curate what I write.
It's funny you said that because when we first started, we and we're still very much, focused on the Black perspective and whether it be pop culture, politics, or just everyday, life and fuckery. We speak on it from a Black perspective. And when we first started, a lot of people, who were, in the podcast community were like, oh, you're going to turn your audience off, or you're not going to, close your group off to, just, people of color. And I was
That's
like,
just too much.
it's just too much cussing. You cuss too much. And it's funny because like those same people are still having really low downloads, and we started out really strong. And so, and it's no shade, to them. It's just we stayed true to who we were.
I stayed in my lane.
Right. We minded our damn business. You know what I mean? And kept doing us.
Right.
Because it didn't feel right to do anything else.
And the thing that's so interesting is the people that are always giving you the advices are the people that haven't even ever tried anything.
Right.
So you've done a podcast? How are you an expert on this?
Right.
I'm just trying to figure out how you know what's best for me.
Where's your resume?
And even if you were an expert, I'm still going to do what I want to do.
Right. I remember one time I went to Miss Free and I was like, Miss Free, so this is what I heard from so-and-so and so-and-so. And she was like, well, I'm a grown-ass woman and I'm going to do what I'm going to do.
Right.
Okay.
I don't have to worry about y'all.
Right. Well, Craig, thank you so much. I wish we can stay on the phone forever because you have so many gems and you're such a wise person. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to chill with us. Like, very humbly appreciated. So thank you so much for joining us on the show.
You're most welcome. Thank you so very much for having me, because you've allowed me to reach another segment of people. So I appreciate that anytime.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Craig. Before
Thank
we
you.
let you go, for those who may not, know who you are, which I don't know how you don't. Okay, but for those who don't know who you are, where can they find you? What give us your website, social media, etc.
The website is www.craigthewriterstewart.com, and my Facebook and Instagram are both at Craig the Writer Stewart. So it's at Craig the Writer Stewart across all social media platforms. And of course, the podcast is called So Much to Say. And again, we are available for free in Spotify, SoundCloud, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, wherever you can listen to a podcast. And we drop a new show every single Monday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yes, you better go ahead and have that script ready.
Right.
Yes.
I've said it enough, right?
Thank you guys so much. And don't forget, you guys, that you can go ahead and check out this interview as well as others and other Spotlight Edition episodes on www.entertheblaze.com. Don't forget to check out our sister podcast with Hope Giselle and 50 Shades of Gay, which is the After the Blaze podcast. And most importantly, don't forget our mother network, PowerMediaNetwork.com, where you can find all types of next level awesome shows and episodes by the fabulous awesome shows that we have that are coming on, that have been on, and that are working to build this great brand that we call Power Media. So definitely check them out by going to www.PowerMediaNetwork.com. And without further ado, Miss Free, do you have anything else?
Nope.
All right, Blazers, we are out.
Bye.